Yo, it's your boy Donnie the Guard. I'm sitting here at Dunkin' Donuts on Craig and Center. I need a haircut. Yo, listen, I just wanted to give some encouragement to some of you young brothers out there. You know what I'm saying? If God brought you out of some dark places, pat yourself on the back. All you young sisters out there, you know, all my people everywhere. If God brought you out of some dark places, or if you yourself, you might not be one of those people that, you know, I don't always do the God language. You know what I'm saying? If you were in some dark places in life, and you yourself know that you are no longer in those dark places that you were, pat yourself in the back. And treat yourself. Because if you don't treat yourself in life, you're going to get that treatment that you do not deserve.
This is a quick peek into the life of a 40-year-old black man whose goal it has become to see the next 40 years healthy and wealthy. I had the perfect routine. I would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, take a shower, and throw on my clothes, carry my bike down my apartment stairs, and begin cycling down the hill after hitting play on my phone as I ride to my favorite playlist. I would grab a cup of coffee at the gas station and begin my workout at the YMCA for a few hours. Then by 8:30, I would be at the library ready to study for my USDOT test. My lease was about to be up and I was thinking about renewing it for another year. My goal was to attend Newcastle Trade School to become a mechanic until I saved up enough money to move back to Ann Arbor to attend the Correctional Officer Academy at Washtenaw Community College in Ypsi. The closing months of my lease were rough. I'd overspent my budget going on dates every night and bought too much merch from Amazon to the point I was behind on rent. That's when shit hit the fan. A virus by the name of Corona was engulfing the world at rampant. Stores were closing. People were not leaving their house like they used to. And you'd be lucky to get a chick to look your way for more than a quick wallet glance, followed by an eye roll, then a never mind. Survival of each man's genes became a true struggle as the Hunger Games began. What started as a COVID summer turned out to be a true gladiator season. I was living between my apartment and my madre crib. My independence became jeopardized when my apartment got robbed and I couldn't figure out which one of my druggy neighbors was responsible. I didn't feel comfortable living there anymore, so I decided to move out and stay with someone else for a while. As time passed, I realized this was not going to work out either, with no true privacy, a few jobs in this city, which once was a thriving steel town. Before I could leave the house, another tragedy happened. My madre, her sister, died, making it difficult to leave mi madre alone by herself. This was the first time I saw mi madre cry since mi padre died in the 90s. As the death toll continued to rise each day, I began to see humanity giving up on life while others were becoming gladiators, forgetting about God, religion, church, etc., and becoming gods themselves. I made my decision to become something like a rap god. I couldn't let my fans down. I had to leave a legacy before I leave. That's when I began stacking books, reading a lot more than ever. I also dropped a lot of music, mixtapes mostly. Redefining myself, cultivating chi. That's when I realized some people chase dragons only to become dragon slayers. Others, petrified of a baby gardener snake, staying haunted by the idea of coming in contact with one their whole life. According to what I believe, two kingdoms exist in opposition to each other. One, the inner kingdom. The other, the outer kingdom. No kingdom above, no kingdom below. As above, so below. One life, one earth, one king. No love, no hate, only intelligence. Thus, my goal became to become intelligent entity among the ignorance which dominates the minds of those who are dominated like dominoes slammed on the table of existence by exorcists of pain. That went from merely existing to becoming deliverers of fear, releasing themselves of any fear on earth by exhorting every fear imaginable on others. Like 50 shades of gray reloaded, waving their serpents at rainbows, triumphing as giants with Jay Leno chins and crooked grins, Italian suits and leather boots. This jaded quest would fade in and blur out from time to time as my memory would become jeopardized by the everyday struggle of holding on to vivid memories that never cease to pass inevitably through harsh trials and the current pain that we have come to know as a travesty or this virus known as COVID-19. Blessed are those who choose to become pilots before the sky began to cast down all the stars who were never meant to fly or even attempt to try at all. I said, blessed are those who chose to become pilots before the sky began to fall, casting down all the stars who were never meant to fly or attempt to try at all. When I was young, my martial arts instructor told me of the story of a sword transporter whose job and duty was to transport precious swords that were made of rare metals worth more than gold and diamonds to kings who bought them from sword makers in Asia all around the world. On one specific journey, this sword transporter was caught off guard by a group of thieves waiting to rob them of their swords and precious antiquities while they traveled on camels' backs through the Arabian desert night. Before this night, when the sword transporter was ambushed by one of the transporter's guards, decided to double-cross him and allow the sword transporter to become vulnerable by allowing him to be robbed with the other guards for a fee by the robbers themselves. The moral of this story was that it is safer to smoke weed and Bible papers than deliver the news heralding a trumpet that is bigger than your own. Or in the words of my martial arts instructor, and also a Chinese parable, he stated, never transport swords for anyone, even kings, when you never know when that sword which you bear may turn on you. As protests increased and talks of a second stimulus lingered on, I remembered telling myself, snap out of it. You're not afraid of the police. You used to work for them. Stop waiting for a stimulus check. Go back to work. That was the day I dusted off my flak jacket, my bulletproof vest, and strapped it on, envisioning the police officer who showed me how to put it on, standing beside me. going through the motions of my training each day until it slowly came back to me that I was a soldier of good fortune and not a misguided warrior like my former companions who I lost to the street. As I watched my apartment slip through the palm of my hands, I began palming my woman's ass with a gorilla's grip, forgetting more and more about the lease that was slipping out of my hands, only to appreciate the moment I was living in that would vanish as soon as my apartment did. Every week, a companion was going to jail. I was slowly distancing myself from the ones who I felt would not make a change before it was too late. For some, it was easy, others very tedious to do. It was not hard to let them go. The difficulty came with dealing with these people whenever I would see them in the street, and they would begrudge me with the decision I made to leave them alone. It was like a make up the breakup type situation with some of these people. As soon as I felt guilty for deciding to sever ties with dead weight, the dead weight would then cause me to feel sorry for them and invite them right back into my life. Weeks passed, so did months, and I went on playing limbo with my career choice for the sake of my former friends. But after a while, I became used to the path which I chose, which was to remain sober and constantly conscious of my obligation to school and my job. As I look back at my childhood, I remember my father telling me when I was young, "Son, you gotta get used to being alone." What he meant was, not everybody is going to be with you and your decisions that you have to make in life sometimes. That's when I began to recall the words of Tupac on his album Me Against the World when he was talking about him and his girlfriend. Suddenly I realized it was the life I chose that led me to the results that I was getting, with a choice of friends that I included in my circle that was not so small. Even my girlfriends were more so easy because the life that I chose. Someone once said to my kid's mother that if you wear cheap perfume, you get a cheap man. I feel like in a way it's the same with women. If you want a woman to do right by you, you not only got to be a do-right man, you got to produce fruit that can visibly show what kind of tree you are. After the Lord removed me from the ground that I was planted in and planted me by a stream of more so living water, I stopped being so stubborn and allowed myself to stay grounded by that living water, which is cleaner friends, cleaner women, a cleaner atmosphere in general. I began to develop and redevelop the sober mind, sober life, sober spirit that I once had before I became a pothead so many years ago. Months passed. NA meeting after AA meeting, church sermon after church sermon. I'm a month clean with no blunts, no weed. Looking at the ashtrays in my window, thinking to myself, where'd it go? The relationships, the money, the fame, the glory. It was all a dream. The world was so new to me. As I would travel from one fantasy to the next, with a duffel bag of CDs and no restraint, no curfew, no COVID-19. On the island of Miami Beach, there was never a limit of hustlers or things to hustle. I guess that is why I would always travel there for my vacations. One of the most brilliant hustles I saw on Miami Beach was the local islanders that would sell coconuts on the beach. Each hustler selling coconuts on the beach had their own way of opening the coconut, some with a ratchet, others with a corkscrew. Others simply used brute force to crack them open on the wall that separated the beach from the grass that I found myself sleeping on many times with all the local bums. They had to have made a killing selling those coconuts all summer. One coconut can be sold for $10 to $20 a coconut. Imagine if you had a shopping cart full of coconuts. Let's say you had 25 coconuts. At $20 a pop, that's $450 in one cart. I guess it just goes to say sometimes you feel like a coconut. Other times you sell the coconuts. I just feel bad for being the coconut who chose not to sell them, but CDs instead. All around the United States, I've seen many forms of hustle. I've been to, or at least through, almost all 50 states in my travels. Most of my memories of riding Greyhound bus, looking out the window at all the farmlands that I crossed in the heartland of America. The food industry, I noticed, has been one of the greatest successes of America aside from the steel industry itself.
This is 4040 Vision, written by Aarao Cornelio Jr. As we continue on, this is part 2. Even the city of Compton, even in the city of Compton, even in the city of Compton, even in the city of Compton. Even in the city of Compton, where I once laid my head, was once farmland long ago, according to the stories that I was told. Nowadays, in modern times, I'd usually see old heads on the block selling barbecue ribs from Long Beach to Pittsburgh. Food carts were a very popular hustle for many city dwellers that may not be artists, but have a grind that cannot be overlooked. I was living in Los Angeles when marijuana became legal for recreational use and watched it become legal in several states since then. So I was not surprised when I watched many weed businesses come to a screeching halt when COVID-19 threw us all for a loop. I never had a chance to invest in the marijuana business like I once considered. But I'm glad I didn't open up a dispensary during the COVID-19 pandemic. I would not want to be sitting on top of pounds when the feds decide to change their mind. I'd rather be flipping barbecue chicken. So what is the black man to do, I would ask myself, in a time when half of us are protesting and the other half hiding under a pillow in the projects waiting for the next stimulus check. Do what white people in your city are doing. Do what Jews, do what Asians around the world are doing. Join the fight against COVID-19. Mask up, mask on, and become a volunteer nurse. They're the front line. If not, stick to driving a truck. If not, stick to driving a truck. Front line. There is a place for everyone in this battle, but be the solution, not the problem. Make America healthy again. Make America healthy again. There are too many sick people and not enough time. In the Lord's Day, there was a man named Lazarus that passed away due to illness. It was the love of his sister, Martha, Mary, that caused them to seek out a Savior, to see hope in their brother Lazarus, and tell him to arise, bringing healing back into his bones with the authority of a living God and the passion of Christ. Today, our mothers, sisters, daughters, aunts, and wives are mourning over us who caught this Lazarus syndrome. And some of us are hearing the call. We as black men have the capacity to become doctors and male nurses instead of being the ones with psychological disorders, inmates, boarders. We just have to make the decision, do we want to SSI, food stamps, or Blue Cross Blue Shield? Decisions. Because some white man, some Asian man, some man is motivated by the Nobel Peace Prize and he's going to find the cure. While more brothers are scared of dying if they share the cure because they believe the hype Dr. Sebi or Nipsey's death were a conspiracy. Even if this was true, it's not stopping young brothers like Nick Cannon from following in their footsteps. And you know what? I give credit to salute young men like Nick Cannon for picking up the work and having the passion not to give up on the culture and humanity itself, because somebody's going to do it. Why not you? It's a scary job, but so is living itself. Somebody's going to do it. Why not you? Do you want to live, or do you want to just exist? That's the question you must ask yourself when you rise every day to see that black face in the mirror. That Latino face, that black face in the mirror. Do you want to be stigmatized by modern day beliefs that all we are good for is being hustlers, players, and pimps with cool rhymes and maybe good dick? Or do we have the endurance to run this marathon, get your master's degrees on, your bachelor's degrees on, or maybe even your certificates, Dr. Ritz? How will our children remember us when we pass away from this lazy wrist syndrome as lazy men who will not save our own family and let another man step in and save the family legacy, traditions, or leave it up to the children themselves to find a cure because some of them will? Why not you? When Magic Johnson found out that he had full-blown AIDS, yeah, he may have had a greater chance of finding a cure because he had dollars in his pockets. But he also had something that a lot of us don't in this modern day and time, and that is the will to survive. It was John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. that once said, "It's not what a man does during times of peace that define his character. It is what we do during times of uncertainty that make us who we are." I hate to say this, but in these times of uncertainty, if we don't have the endurance and the courage to overcome this virus as middle-aged adults, how will we have the faith to overcome the diseases of the future when we are 70, 80, or 90, if we make it some? Think about it, and while you think, mask on. Or, if you're brave enough, mask off. When someone I knew was in their early 20s, she, like I and many others in the black community, suffered from mental illness. For years during her undergrad studies, she spent time in and out of hospitals until she became a champion of mental health herself, earning her master's degree from an Ivy League school, setting her apart from so many of us who decided to settle and let their diseases overcome them. My padre and my tío also worked in the medical field, which made them not only relevant to their time, but an asset and a commodity to an environment they resided in. to any environment they resided in. For years, Avo y Eva would stress the importance of being relevant to me. It was not that they were not proud of me being a musician, or that they thought I couldn't make it in the entertainment business. It simply was not the African way. It simply was not the Latino or the African way. It simply was just not the American way. In my parents' country, men of knowledge and physical skills and values were known as griots, not just poets, but builders as well. Jacks of any trade, masters of none. Not just musician, masters of none. It's no longer a question what happened to us. It was no doubt the bondage of slavery and the sins of the father. But why nowadays we are so still psychologically enslaved, not just to white men, but powerful men, any men? I believe it's because situations like COVID-19, we are waiting for not just the white Jesus to save us, any men to save us, except us. Thus, in life, we are always waiting for not just white men, but any man besides ourselves to make the first move. Even in the game of chess, it's the white piece that moves first. But in life, why is it you who doesn't move first? We are psychologically trained to believe that we are inferior of other races because of this. But you know what? Even if you're white, if you have no money, you think similar to this. I believe that COVID-19 is another form of economic segregation. But you know what? When you have no money, that's also a form of segregation, regardless what color you are. And to break these chains of ignorance, we must realize that we have been miseducated like Carter G. Woodson and re-educate ourselves to become black messiahs and no longer Uncle Toms. I firmly believe the messiahs were doctors, and to be Messianic is to be not only a master craftsman when it comes to building, but also when it comes to edifying one's mind, body, and soul. As is said, the body thyself is a temple, purify it, keep it holy. This can be attained by meditation, fasting, prayer. As it is said, cleanliness is next to holiness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Everybody be godly now. Every generation that has defiled itself by worshiping other gods, eating foul foods, practicing homosexuality, and all forms of immoral and things ending up dying from horrible diseases, were not of the elect who realized the way to live is to be enlightened and walk blamelessly. To walk blamelessly is to realize God is veritas, God is veritas, God is veritas, and God is life. Submit to God, render to God, and work every day guarding yourself against folly of not working every day in every breathing moment. God is the rewarder of the children of God. God is the rewarder of the children of God. All one must do to please God, all one must do to please God is work like a slave, and you will be honored like kings. Work like a slave, eat like a king. Wash every day until you're purified. Clean your mind and your heart each day by praying every night, confessing your sins each night, and striving to never repeat them, and striving for a higher calling in life. If you're a believer and if you believe your calling is to be a lawyer, then become a lawyer of all lawyers. If you believe your calling is to become a doctor, then become a doctor of all doctors. Tonight, a doctor died and left his doctor's tools to collect rust if no one picks up his tools and carries on the tradition of a doctor. Somewhere in America, a lawyer passed away. So did an officer and a judge and a teacher and a nurse, and they all left their tools, and they all will collect rust until this generation picks up that badge, picks up that stethoscope, picks up that gavel and that chalk and eraser, and lead the children by example instead of falling by the wayside, flipping packs and rapping our life away, smoking our lives away because we think that's the only way. Or we will get laid. Or what will get us laid, or street fame. On TV, there is a show called The Doctors. Why are there no black doctors on that show? On TV, cable TV, like it's the internet, but you remember on TV, same thing. On TV, do you remember the show The Doctors? Why are there no black doctors on that show? No, there's doctors in real life. You go to the hospital, you see doctors. You go to your psychiatrist, there's black doctors there too. There's black doctors everywhere. But why are there no black doctors on that show? I'm going to tell you why. Because a doctor is the hardest thing to become, especially a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon. There also is a show called Scrubs with Omar Epps. And you know what? I salute Omar Epps for taking on this role. One of my next books for this purpose, I think I'm just going to call it Think Like a Doctor. It's going to be all about doctors in my family, beginning with my grandpa, Avo, Dr. J. My father's godfather, Aaron McMillan. My dad worked in the infirmary as a medic in the army, and so on. But before I get into all that, I want to take a sidestep and tackle this concept of tunnel vision, or what I call 40-40 vision. Now that we're aware of the obstacles and the challenges, and we know where we want to be as far as in college and our careers, and not in the streets or the system trying to be hustlers. We must build a set of stairs that we can actually see and begin to climb until we are upon some type of a level, or should I say, our dean. I was told not to self-write a book about dad called The Dean. Note to self, I should write a book about my dad called The Dean. As a side note. Back to the hood, back to reality, back to life. When I was in the streets, I was walking a female home, and she pointed out of the hood. She pointed to these buildings. She actually pointed to like either the UPMC building or like the BNY building or some kind of building downtown. Son. When I was in the streets, I was walking a female home, and she pointed the way out of the hood. She pointed to the buildings downtown, and she said, "You got to get up in those buildings, son." Meaning, become a corporate hustler, not a block hustler. Get on your briefcase business. Get a briefcase, get a suit and tie, get a briefcase, son. And keep it tight till you're standing on top of an empire. Keep it tight until you are the empire. Keep it tight, build an empire. You are the empire, son. When I was locked up, I was in the lamp mode phase. I call this phase lamp mode because all I could do was lamp, meaning chill until my freedom came. But also because there was a light in the attic, meaning a blueprint that I was cooking up. I called this master plan the imprint because I was inside when it came to me, and inside of me is where it stayed. No paper. I had to memorize everything, all my tattoo ideas, all my album ideas, all my business ideas, all my career moves. Everything came to me when I was inside. I call it the imprint. I had an idea called the Illmatic formula. This formula was based on 4 levels of math: algebra, geometry, calculus, and statistics. I also called it the formatics. Another goal of mine came when I got access to the law library. I got a hold of a book called The Willie Lynch Papers on how to create a slave. I finished reading it when I got out ordering it from a local library. I nicknamed myself Willie Lamp. I began writing another book called Kingmakers, or The Makings of a King. This book, which I wrote while I was locked up, was based on the Society of Scholars who came together to form the first all-black law firm called Willie Esquire and Company, or the Society of Scholars. I began stacking books in the form of SD cards and selling them on campus to students and notes to help them pass their classes when COVID hit. Campuses closed. I began looking for college students up on Facebook, mainly black law students, and pitching my idea of my all-black law firm to students who didn't finish school because of COVID and start having virtual study sessions. I began downloading math, science, physics, and chemistry lessons to my phone to educate myself instead of downloading just music and porn. I began selling these lessons to customers in the form of SD cards and flash drives, which came as a commodity, especially when schools began shutting down. I also began filming movies with a moral to each story, researching Black Hollywood, also tightening up on my budget and using my phone to film independent movies and shoot music videos to save money so I can purchase that building and proceed to build those stairs that I was told to build that I can see, which is reality. I also got heavy into studying art and flipping houses. And I realized the key to owning commercial property was owning residential property first, becoming a landlord and renting out apartments to tenants with legit business, and incorporate them until you can buy your first commercial property. I even had an idea about a movie about flipping houses into corporations called Slum Village, about a slumlord who met a female hustler gone straight and created a corporate enterprise by flipping houses and using the houses to make schools for ghetto kids. They called the enterprise Black Ivy. I didn't forget to study other authors such as Jay-Z, Decoded, Rick Ross, Hurricane, etc., 50 Cent, Pieces to Wait, which I got from a local library on a Monday. Since I've been on the up and up, I've been doing a lot of writing. I found it very therapeutic throughout this COVID summer and gladiator season to reflect through my writings and not just music. On the other hand, my approach to music has changed, but my passion for music has not. On the other hand, my approach to music has changed, but my passion for music itself has not. Nowadays, I have been composing a lot of punk music, heavy metal. I don't do too much hip hop aside from spinning mixtapes on my digital turntables, an online radio show, The Daily Planet, and making beats. I chose to remain independent as an artist because it's easy to be labeled one type of genre such as rap, trap, or gangster. You have no creative control. If I ever sign to a major, it will be after I graduate from law school. I feel only then can one truly understand the game thoroughly enough to trap the kind of rewards which I aim to. Plus, by that time, I will be more versed in genres such as classical, etc. I even wrote a book called Amadeus about a young black classical composer who went to Berkeley. I created a fund for instruments for my bands, such as drum sets, guitars, mixing boards, speakers, flutes, all sorts of live instruments. And instead of buying them on eBay or Amazon, I looked more at flea markets and bargain stores like Goodwill and Salvation Army. Once I got away from my old crew of rappers, I realized the reason why I left the rap game to drive trucks and pursue Correction Officer Academy. It was because I let others' ideas influence my music through their position of power, which they use to influence me and the way I pursue my goals. Even if they didn't own a label or have any capital whatsoever, I realized the smaller business owners or even petty hustlers can have just as much of an influence on the way I made my music because I gave them the benefit of the doubt in most situations, just because I once believed that everyone's point of view should be respected when that is not at all the case. I began building my empire when I stopped by looking at it as just a music empire or street empire. I began building my empire when I stopped looking at it as just a music empire or street empire, instead of looking at it like just a black empire or Ivy League or anything empire. Instead of looking for labels to give me advice, give me an advance, I looked at banks for a loan and began researching grants, advance, while I build my credit and save money in the bank to build my credit. I also started studying a lot more for my CDL and correctional officer exam. I felt I could be more relevant to my people by doing more than one thing, by doing both, and use the money I earn to invest in my music by doing more than one thing: books, film, fashion, etc. Proving to myself and those who have watched me blossom into the social butterfly, that there is more than one kind of self-made millionaire. Not all of us sell drugs and sell our soul to enter the millionaire domain. Some of us sell websites. Some of us sell email addresses. Some of us sell domain names and hustle campaign for every bit of change, more than one thing. And this is what I mean when I say hustle campaign, or when I refer to Hotline Bling hustle campaign. Being an entity that is built, not bought. Being an entity that is for the people and by the people. Being a vehicle to greater success for oneself and others. Being ready to not just politic to death, but politic until the stack of presidents in your pocket is higher than the high rises in Chicago. Until you are the most flyest in the room, still sober, doing more than one thing. The only thing is, as sober as I was still living in a men's homeless shelter. It wasn't easy to find my rhythm and maintain my rhythm in a building full of men that are either working on themselves or completely broken down. So I began to put myself in the mind state of an inmate awaiting my release date, which simply was the day when the program I was in helped me get an apartment. It was not hard to realize this mind state. Invisible bars, invisible chains, but every real limitation, curfews, limitations on the property you can have in your possession, or period, no women on the premises, etc. I have never been to the penitentiary, but they say upstate inmates are granted more freedom, which causes them to find ways around the system, loopholes, etc. At the age of 40, it is not my goal to cheat the system or try and beat the system. Instead, learned to operate in a religious facility like the shelter that I was living in without being religious or having another religion's view imposed on my own. It's like they say, real recognize real. Religion also recognizes religion. And one thing I know is that Protestants, such as the shelter that I was in, recognize the Holy Catholic Church as stated in the Communion of Saints and the Apostles' Creed. So as long as I paid respects to the Catholic Church, I wouldn't be imposed on because every church respects the Pope. They may not say they do, but they will tap out when the lights are cut off. If they don't. April 15th, 2020 was the day the lights were cut off. Churches began being shut down everywhere, schools closed, and a form of martial law was established. I came to this conclusion: if humanity is forced to receive the IFC chip, I will receive it gladly. I will receive it gladly. If Bibles disappear and the rapture happens and I am left behind, I will find a way to survive gladly. I will survive gladly. I will find my own conclusion. I will choose my own fate. I will be the ruler of my own destiny gladly. I will be as fierce as a Roman soldier. I will help build this new Rome. I will one day be a Black Caesar gladly. I began decoding the Bible when I was locked up. The code was broken by, somebody I used to date, but for integrity's sake, nothing familiar. But there were links to this chain that still lingered. I had to accept the fact the Bible was not the only source of truth. Every book has a bit of truth, from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Tao to the I Ching, even the Quran. I began striving to read them all. But it's not reading them alone which will open your eyes to the truth. It was me discernfully analyzing what applies to myself, what applies to my life, and what does not. I realized that Jesus and Mary Magdalene very well may have had a line of descendants that are still living to this day. Some people call them Israelites, some people don't. I believe that Jesus died for love. I believe that Jesus actually was really on earth. I believe that Jesus represented love. Specifically, love for his wife that very well could have been Mary Magdalene, and the preservation of his seed that very well could have been everyone. I believe every man and woman and child is a melting pot of every race that walked this planet, and we should honor each attribute of ourselves by celebrating all cultures as one. When I was young and Afrocentric, my focus in college, I began studying other cultures and letting them intertwine with my own. One of my favorite kung fu flicks was The 5 Deadly Venoms. I now believe there are 5 powerful or deadly races, and the most influential is the race that is open-minded and accepting of the fact that we are all a variation of each other and a unique manifestation of our own. So I began to develop my own philosophy to life, which represented part Rasta in me, part Catholic in me, part Hebrew in me, part Asian in me, even Polish, even Italian. Gave myself a nickname, Leonardo Amistad Dominici Vespucci. And my son, if I had one, I would name him Troy Apollyon. Ulysses Seth Grant Corleone. Each attribute represented each one of my godfathers and my last. Nothing familiar. Godmother, Corleone, who are saints to me. Beginning with Maria. Around the time of this bid, I wrote a book called The Deaf Keys, about 5 keys to having a successful career in the music industry, based on the science of rap by KRS-One. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. I wash my face in the bathroom mirror, and I'm 80 years old. How did that happen? Time flies. Get money. Get culture. One queen. One king. As above, so below. One. April 15th, 2020 was the day the lights were cut off. Churches began being shut down everywhere, schools closed, and a form of martial law was established. I came to this conclusion: if humanity is forced to receive the IFC chip, I will receive it gladly. I will receive it gladly. If Bibles disappear and the rapture happens and I am left behind, I will find a way to survive gladly. I will survive gladly. I will find my own conclusion. I will choose my own fate. I will be the ruler of my own destiny gladly. I will be as fierce as a Roman soldier. I will help build this new Rome. I will one day be a black Caesar gladly. I began decoding the Bible when I was locked up. The code was broken by, somebody I used to date, but for integrity's sake, nothing familiar. But there were links to this chain that still lingered. I had to accept the fact the Bible was not the only source of truth. Every book has a bit of truth, from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Tao to the I Ching, even the Quran. I began striving to read them all. But it's not reading them alone which will open your eyes to the truth. It was me discernfully analyzing what applies to myself, what applies to my life, and what does not. I realized that Jesus and Mary Magdalene very well may have had a line of descendants that are still living to this day. Some people call them Israelites, some people don't. I believe that Jesus died for love. I believe that Jesus actually was really on earth. I believe that Jesus represented love. Specifically, love for his wife that very well could have been Mary Magdalene, and the preservation of his seed that very well could have been everyone. I believe every man and woman and child is a melting pot of every race that walked this planet, and we should honor each attribute of ourselves by celebrating all cultures as one. When I was young and Afrocentric, my focus in college, I began studying other cultures and letting them intertwine with my own. One of my favorite kung fu flicks was The 5 Deadly Venoms. I now believe there are 5 powerful or deadly races, and the most influential is the race that is open-minded and accepting of the fact that we are all a variation of each other and a unique manifestation of our own. So I began to develop my own philosophy to life, which represented part Rasta in me, part Catholic in me, part Hebrew in me, part Asian in me, even Polish, even Italian. Gave myself a nickname, Leonardo Amistad Dominici Vespucci. And my son, if I had one, I would name him Troy Apollyon. Ulysses Seth Grant Corleone. Each attribute represented each one of my godfathers and my last. Nothing familiar. Godmother, Corleone, who were saints to me. Beginning with Maria. Around the time of this bid, I wrote a book called The Deaf Keys, about 5 keys to having a successful career in the music industry, based on the science of rap by KRS-One. Warm. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. I wash my face in the bathroom mirror, and I'm 80 years old. How did that happen? Time flies. Get money. Get culture. One queen. One king. As above, so below. Warm.